Hi, my name is Steven Brozovic. I started my journey with Amazon in August of 1999 as a web developer. Now, 22 years and about 14 different careers later, I'm a principal evangelist with the AWS People Experience team. My role is to help AWS customers around the world unlock invention and innovation within their own organizations by sharing some of the lessons we've learned in our journey. Our journey as a company began on July 5th of 1994 when Jeff Bezos founded Amazon in the back of his garage in Bellevue, Washington. From that moment until today, our approach to innovation has been the same. We put the customer first and work backwards from their needs. We constantly experiment and test and iterate, and we have the patience to make big bets and maintain a long-term view of the business and the value we're driving for customers. And most importantly, we make sure we're earning trust with customers every day and constantly delivering delight to all our customers around the world. There are many valid ways to approach innovation. A lot of companies start by looking at their capabilities, and from there, they decide what to go build. Then they work with sales and marketing to find customers that might want to buy their products. And that model works well for a lot of organizations, but that's not our model. At Amazon, instead of starting with our capabilities, we start by understanding our customers so that we can innovate on their behalf. This approach is embodied in our mission statement, which is to be Earth's most customer-centric company. Our mission is intentionally broad, not limited to a specific market or industry, but it's also laser-focused on the customer, which helps us channel our decision-making into what's best for them. We believe this is where innovation begins, by starting with the customer and working backwards. So, why does Amazon focus on customers? Because we don't look to develop technology for technology's sake or invent in isolation. We start by listening to our ever-changing customer needs, and then we invent on their behalf. This leads us to endless ideas and multiple opportunities, and it's what inspires everyone at Amazon to invent and innovate products, services, and offerings that surprise and delight our customers. We call this process working backwards from the customer, and it's been in our DNA since day one. Amazon got its start selling books online, which, when you think about it, may seem like an odd choice in our digital age. Out of all of the products you could sell online, why start with an antiquated business like books? Remember, in 1995, the internet and e-commerce were not as commonplace as they are now. But Jeff Bezos was determined to start some kind of e-commerce company because he saw that web usage was growing at more than 2,300% per year. And as Jeff thought through all the different products that could kickstart his e-commerce site, books presented the best opportunity, mainly because of the incredibly large catalog of titles that were actively available compared to other products like music. In 1995, there were over 3.5 million book titles across all languages, and 1.5 million of those were in English. And there's no way you could make every single one of those titles available to customers in a single traditional bricks and mortar store. So Jeff saw the potential of making a vast selection of books available online for customers to search and discover. Books also have the advantage of fairly standard sizes across formats, and they're non-perishable, which means you can package them up and ship them long distances, creating a consistent and reliable experience for customers. Fast forward from 1995 to 2007, and some pretty large technological changes were happening. Mobile phones and other smart devices had entered the market, and customers' experiences and desires were changing. In addition to reading physical books, customers were accessing huge amounts of information through their devices. At Amazon, we're often asked what we think will change in the future. What we're not asked about as often is what won't change. And that's where we were focused on at this time. What are the long-term durable needs of customers? Let's think about our customer, the book lover. What will be true about that customer 10 years from now? What can we guarantee they'll always want more of? The answer is more to read. And we said, what is the persistent problem that every avid reader has? Well, the main problem with physical books is that they're, physical. They're heavy and they take up space. The only way to solve that enduring problem for customers was to come up with a way to digitize books that customers would love to use. So, in November of 2007, Amazon worked backwards from a long-term need and launched the first Kindle device. The Kindle gave customers access to any book in any language, all in 60 seconds or less. It's what Amazon terms a most lovable product, one that delivers that core, fantastic reading experience, but also satisfies the need to find, discover, and store books digitally. And we continue to iterate, always looking for new ways to add extra delight for customers. The Kindle reading experience has evolved with technology. The latest models are lighter, faster, have better battery life and storage capacity. Some are even waterproof, with a form factor that has vastly improved since its first iteration. Now, launching a books business or building a device like Kindle involves a lot of difficult decisions. If we truly want to keep pace with customers' changing needs, we have to find a way to make high-quality decisions quickly. Since day one, Amazon's approach to innovation has been to put the customer first and work backwards from their needs. And back then, it was easy for Jeff Bezos and his leadership team to be in every single meeting to make sure that Amazon employees, or Amazonians as we call them, were operating according to those three big ideas: put the customer first, invent, and have patience. But by 1998, the organization had already grown to a point where it was too large for Jeff and his leadership team to be in all those meetings and have all those corridor conversations. They couldn't have that direct line of sight to the decisions that were being made and always be there to help ensure Amazonians were guided by those three big beliefs. The organization had to adapt so we could keep relentlessly obsessing over customers, putting them at the center of everything we were doing. So, Jeff took a step back. He had a look at leaders in Amazon who were successful, and he asked himself what qualities and behaviors they exhibited and how they made decisions in the organization on a daily basis. And working with his leadership team, he came up with a list of core principles that could act as a set of guardrails to help a large, growing company make decisions that would keep the customer at the center of everything. These are our leadership principles, and as you can see, customer obsession is right at the top. There's actually no official order to the leadership principles. They're designed to be used in balance and in context with the specific decision that an Amazonian needs to make. They help us look at challenging and complex problems from many different angles and make high-quality and high-velocity decisions. As the company has continued to grow, so have our leadership principles. For example, in July 2021, we added 2 more to reflect our aim to be Earth's best employer and the safest place to work. Those 2 additions recognize our responsibility to continue to improve, to do better for our customers, our employees, our partners, and the world at large. The leadership principles at Amazon describe how we do business, how we want leaders to lead, and how we ensure we keep the customer at the center of every decision we make. They really form a common language for decision-making across the organization, and we really do use them every day. In fact, we spend a huge amount of time putting them to work as we review people who would like to work at Amazon. We look to hire builders, people who like to look at customer experiences and hard decisions from different angles and assess how they can improve or iterate to make things better for customers, or reinvent them altogether. Amazon's mission is to be Earth's most customer-centric company. An easy thing to say, but not necessarily an easy thing to execute on a daily basis, given we operate across hundreds of countries with multiple discrete business units and have over 1 million employees around the world. Even with our working backwards from the customer process, our focus on long-term needs, reviewing our leadership principles, it's a challenge. To add to that challenge, the way we structure innovation in our business is quite unique. We don't have a central innovation function. We don't have a team sitting in Seattle saying this is the way we must innovate and these are the products that we must launch tomorrow. We don't believe that one person should decide things that are developed across the business. In fact, we believe that every single person hired to work at Amazon is a leader and should be able to invent and develop new products, services, and experiences on behalf of the customer they're looking to delight at any one time. To enable this freedom, we structure our innovation and the culture of innovation generally found at Amazon around 4 main elements. First, is our customer-centric culture and the people we look to hire in the business. Second are the consistent mechanisms or processes that we provide to those individuals so that they can operate independently and autonomously. The third relates to the way we organize those people into agile, empowered teams that can move fast and stay close to their customers. And finally, the technical architecture that allows them to constantly experiment and test and iterate ideas on behalf of their customer. Thinking about number one, how Amazon uses culture to drive innovation, let's go back to the guardrails for decisions that we spoke about earlier, the leadership principles. As an example of how the leadership principles guide discussions, let's look at bias for action. It's useful here because it speaks to innovation and the need to make decisions quickly. The first part of this leadership principle reminds us that speed matters in business. But how do you know when to move quickly? When you're innovating at a fast pace and at a large scale, you won't always know all the answers. And that can be scary because of the potential risk or the ambiguity of moving into unknown areas. The leadership principle guides us on how to deal with that, reminding us that most decisions are reversible and don't need extensive study. Taking that principle a step further, there's a good mental model we've developed in the business to help us deal with decision-making and bias for action. And it breaks down decisions into one-way and two-way doors. A one-way door decision has irrevocable consequences. If you're going to step through that door, you need to make sure you have all the answers and you've performed really deep analysis. Because when the door closes behind you, it's incredibly difficult to go back without ramifications that impact your customers and your business. But the good news is, when you look closely at the decisions you make in business, most are reversible. They are two-way door decisions. You can simply step through a door, test something with your customers, and learn how it's used and adopted. Then you can go back through that door, take what you've learned and iterate and improve it, or reverse it altogether. Maybe your customers responded well to your idea, but there are certain things you could pivot to improve the experience. If your customers loved the idea, how quickly could you scale it? And if it didn't work, how could you fail fast and kill the idea, capturing the learning and applying those lessons to another innovation in the future? Moving on to the second element we've created to help builders in our organization innovate: mechanisms. When facing recurring problems, a team might have all the right intentions, but good intentions don't solve problems. Mechanisms solve problems. Note that mechanism has a very specific meaning at Amazon. It's essentially a virtuous cycle that improves itself as it operates. We start the process by introducing a mechanism that we believe will help deliver the right results. We observe the adoption and the use of that mechanism, gathering data around the right inputs that help drive the best outputs. Then iterate that mechanism to improve it, driving more adoption, more data to inform improvement and iteration, and so on, creating a complete, self-improving, closed-loop flywheel. There are many types of mechanisms across the Amazon business, but in the context of innovation, the hallmark mechanism is called the working backwards process. Every product or service developed at Amazon has been through this working backwards process. We use this mechanism to ensure we're building the right thing for our customers before we actually go and build it. This process takes the input of customer-centric thinking and delivers an output in the form of a written document called the PR FAQ, made up of three components. The first component is the press release. The second is frequently asked questions, or the FAQ. And the third is the visuals. We write the press release, envisioning a world 1 to 2 years in the future where the customer's problem has been solved. The press release is written with a customer-centric viewpoint, avoiding any business jargon. It helps us think big and identify what the product would be, what the most important benefit for the customer would be, and most importantly, what the entire customer experience will look like and why it will surprise and delight them. But we all know that ideas are frequent and cheap. It's not just about what you're delivering, but why and how. And this is where the FAQs come in. While the press release is restricted to one page to force clarity of thought and focus on the customer and the benefit your innovation will deliver, the FAQs could be up to 5 pages. The FAQs are made up of 2 distinct parts. First, we include questions we believe the customer is most likely to ask. What is this new product or service? How much does it cost? Is it available to me in my area? And how do I use it with other products or services I might have? Then we include internal FAQs, those questions we anticipate will and should be asked by internal stakeholders. For example, how does this map to our strategy? How does this idea provide a differentiated customer experience? Or are there any one-way doors to consider? And by the way, if there's that really uncomfortable question you hope nobody asks you about your big idea, we put it front and center in the FAQ. We may not have an answer to that question yet, but we know we'll need to answer it before we start building. The third part of the PR FAQ document is the visuals. The visuals bring the customer experience to life in ways words cannot. They exist to communicate the end-to-end customer experience. All three of these elements make up the PR FAQ, and we find it to be an enormously beneficial process. It helps us stay customer-centric and allows anyone in the company to come to the table with an idea they can share and refine and debate, and then launch. It's also important to point out that working backwards is not an approval process. It's an iteration process. We get asked a lot about the cost of failure at Amazon and how we fail fast in our organization. Our working backwards mechanism and the PR FAQ document are key here. They mean that all it costs to innovate is the time it takes to write and refine the idea. The benefit is a low-cost way to vet ideas rapidly across our organization, to encourage stakeholders to challenge assumptions and bring diverse viewpoints that help us get the right innovation implementation right from the very beginning. Jeff Bezos sums up the working backwards process extremely well in this quote from an all-hands from Amazon, talking about the importance of this mechanism. Done correctly, the working backwards process is a huge amount of work, but it saves you even more time later. The working backwards process is not designed to be easy. It's designed to save huge amounts of work on the back end and to make sure that we're actually building the right thing. It's also important to note that in going through this process, these ideas may never be commercialized. No line of code is written. No penny is spent on marketing. Nothing is built until we agree that the opportunity outlined will be able to deliver incredible benefits for our customers in the right way. The third element we look to when structuring for innovation in our organization is how we organize for speed and agility. As we know, innovation relies on finding the right builders, people who embody our method of innovation, who like to invent and who want to build the future on behalf of customers. But to maximize our builders' potential to innovate, we have to organize them so they can truly build fast and empower them with the autonomy and independence they need to invent on behalf of their customers. The Amazonian way of organizing teams is known as two pizza teams, which ultimately means that no team is larger than it takes to be fed by two American-style pizzas. Now, we can debate the size of the pizza or what the right toppings are, depending on local tastes. But research and data tells us that if a team grows too large, over 10 individuals, then the need for bureaucracy and meetings and matrixed communication exponentially increases. So the concept of a two-pizza team is fundamentally like a little startup that can operate in a lean, agile, and nimble way. And every one of these startups has the right conditions and resources to own what it is they're creating. Right from the start, the right resources are embedded into this two-pizza team so they can own what they create through the end-to-end life cycle of their product or service. But clearly, one team can only handle so much. So, when the need or responsibility of a team grows, rather than increase the size of the team, we create multiple two-pizza teams focused on individual elements of the original product or service. Each two-pizza team has a single-threaded focus on one part of that product or service. This approach enables rapid and frequent experimentation and helps teams stay close to their customers so they can invent on their behalf. Enabling these teams to be agile and experiment early and frequently also helps us lower the cost of failure because we learn a lot more earlier and at lower stakes. The final element of our innovation-led culture at Amazon is architecture. The builders we hire into our businesses need a robust set of technical tools that free them up from constraints and enables them to innovate rapidly. More than a decade ago, we took our monolithic code base and broke it down into self-service microservice architecture over several years. Ultimately, that means our builders have access to the technology and the software and the systems they need to be able to test their ideas without worrying about downstream impacts to the code or waiting for resources. Microservices ultimately remove gatekeepers, allowing free access to technical tools for anyone, democratizing access and making them available immediately to test and launch, allowing for rapid scale and iteration. One of the biggest culprits in slowing the speed of innovation in a large organization is builders having to involve themselves in undifferentiated tasks and the heavy lifting dictated by technical tools. By enabling a microservices architecture, we enable our builders to spend much more of their time building and innovating. By moving to self-service microservices, we've fundamentally changed our technological structure so there's no gatekeeper to innovation. That speeds up the cycles of invention so we can move from idea to implementation right away. To wrap up, these 4 elements are how we think about innovation across Amazon and AWS. First, we look to hire builders, people who build a culture of innovation across our organization. Second, we provide them with mechanisms, virtuous cycles that enable them to deliver rapidly on behalf of their customers. Third, we organize them into small, nimble, agile teams that can move quickly and own what they create. And finally, through our 4th element, we provide them with the right building blocks, the robust architecture and technology to be able to experiment, to prototype, and to test ideas that will deliver surprise and delight on behalf of their customers. When we execute all 4 of these elements together, we find we're able to deliver true value to customers and unleash the potential of every single person in our business. We push innovation to the edge of our organization and keep the customer at the center of everything that we do. There is value in using any one of these 4 elements on its own, but we find by combining them, they provide a network effect that pushes innovation to the edge, enabling every single one of our Amazonians to invent on behalf of their customer. And even though I've covered these at a high level, hopefully it's clear that at Amazon, you're not just allowed to, but you're expected to innovate every day on behalf of your customer. And that brings us back to where we started today, at the very beginnings of Amazon. Since 1994, we've had 3 big ideas guiding us. First, obsess over the customer. Second, have the patience and rigor to plant big ideas and constantly experiment and iterate. And finally, be stubborn on the long-term vision. I hope I've provided some useful insights into Amazon's approach to innovation and maybe some ideas that could be relevant for your organization's blueprint. Hopefully, they spark further thoughts on how you can accelerate innovation with your own teams and how we at AWS can support you at every step in your innovation journey.